Okay, we are live and on camera now. Let me tell the Discord. Let's get the music going. Always got to have the music. Ah, there we go. There we go. There we go. Well, this is another surprise stream. I'm bundling up. It's a little bit cold here in Seattle today. Normally I talk about drawing tablets, or I talk about things that are very related to drawing tablets. And that is what I'm going to talk about today, but not exactly just drawing tablets. I'm going to talk about a very special topic. In fact, when I started this channel, what was it, in I think January of 2022, this was intended to be my first topic, my first video. And I got distracted by EMR. I actually thought I was going to do this topic, which I'll bring up in a second, though it is in the title. And I thought, wow, that's going to take me some time to figure out how to explain this. And I'm not sure if I've got my story straight technically, and I don't know how to narratively introduce the story. And so I thought, let me just pick something easy for a while to start with. And so I decided to talk about drawing tablets. Now, you know what happened after that. One video about drawing tablets turned into several years of drawing tablets. I'm still not even done. I think I've just scratched the surface of drawing tablets. So, by the way, at the time, remember I had 7 pens at the time. That's how I got the channel title. And now I have something like 139 pens now. And 119 tablets. So I really went deep on the drawing tablet topic. But what is the real topic? Hi, Plus, and good to see you. Good to see you. The real topic I wanted to start the channel with. Remember, the purpose of the channel, which I've mentioned many times, is not drawing tablets. It's about the intersection between creative things and technology. That's really what I'm trying to do. And drawing tablets are a great place to talk about it because they have this artistic component, this creative component, and they have, some real tech involved. The other thing the first topic I want to talk about was, and there's different ways of getting into the topic, but they're all related, okay? There's actually 2 ways I thought about introducing the topic, which is, the first was, what is a pixel? Now, if you go on Google right now or on YouTube and you search what is a pixel, which I'm going to do in just a second. There's my thumbnail from yesterday. Hang on. Let's find Google here. Let's see. What is a pixel? What is a pixel? Okay, so let's show you this. Okay, so almost just by looking at the thumbnails, I can tell you what they're roughly talking about. Okay, and you can tell because of the thumbnail, because they're showing you something. What they're showing you are displays. Okay, and I want to clarify. Let's just make sure. Oh, I had a nice comment there on YouTube. That they're not wrong. There's nothing wrong with what these people are saying. They are correct, but also they are, in a sense, talking about they're talking in a certain way about this topic that is quite familiar to us and very understandable to us, but does not represent probably, I would say, a view. It doesn't represent a kind of mathematical view, okay? Which may in fact be the original view of a pixel. That part is lost. And that mathematical definition is important. Not super critical for you to do art with or be creative, but it's important because when you understand that, some other terms start making sense, even though it's not obvious right now. Okay? So let's begin that. There's this question, or there's something I have just said, which is there's a definition of a pixel which is somewhat very different from the way it's introduced in all these videos on YouTube. Okay? Very different. In fact, if I scroll down here, let's just take a look at this one, because it actually talks about the history of the pixel as fast as possible, right? And I'm not going to play the audio.
Comes from the word,
but I'm just going to scroll down here and I can sort of tell where it's going to come. Yeah. Again, this is focused on how it works in displays, okay? And there is one definition of pixel, but by the way, it says that the thing you see on the display is not a pixel. I know, it seems totally counterintuitive. There is at least one person, quite a few people I would say, who in their sense quite properly would say, oh, those things of color you see on the screen, those are not pixels. And a lot of us would probably be like, what? Of course they are. But they have their reasons, which are based in some really interesting things. There is even a paper by one of these people, Alvy Ray Smith. He's a co-founder of Pixar, by the way. And I believe his paper is called, and you'll understand this because if you've used Photoshop or any kind of drawing app, we think of pixels as little squares of color. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote a paper called "A Pixel is Not a Little Square of Color." Let me see if I can find it. Alvy Ray Smith. A pixel is not a little square of color. Yeah, pixel is not a little square in 1995. Okay. Now I'm going to just read you what it says, but it may not make any sense. Okay. We will talk about it. This AI overview is actually pretty good here, but it's called, it says Alvy Ray Smith's "A Pixel is Not a Little Square," 1995, argues that pixels are fundamentally points, zero-dimensional samples of color information, not small squares or rectangles. A pixel is a point sample from an image, and the square grid visual is a common misconception or a reconstruction artifact, not the pixel's inherent shape. And I want to share that in this world, this definition is quite accurate. What is you're seeing here is quite accurate, but very alien to our world, our way of thinking about pixels. Okay, so that's one topic. There's this like, what the heck is a pixel? And the reason that becomes important is consider the other way this topic gets introduced, or I thought of it introducing it, which is many of you are familiar with a concept called anti-aliasing. Okay? Now I want you to think of, I am a person who loves using language to help us figure out what we're saying. I know that seems too obvious. It's more like this. The existence, let me just show you something. This is a little bit of a joke. I just thought of this. Batman. Yeah, Batman shark repellent. Okay, now I'm going to show you a picture because I know YouTube does not like it. So there's an episode of the Batman show, or Batman Robin, which is, I don't know, 1960s TV show. And Batman is being attacked by a shark, and it says there's at least twice now we understand that he was attacked by a shark, and he has his shark repellent. Okay, so just language tells us that if you have a canister of shark repellent, it implies the existence of the word shark and a thing called a shark. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up is because this is like a negation. Well, it's not quite a negation, but you get the idea, right? It's saying this is for like, if you don't want sharks, you use this. Okay, so that means that this is a shark, right? Now, think about the word anti-aliasing. 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 Let's just go here. Okay. And I just looked at the Wikipedia article. Okay. And if there's a thing called anti-aliasing, which is obviously trying to negate an alias, you have to ask yourself, what the heck is an alias? In other words, let's take a look at some pictures here. Nature. I'm just trying to show you a picture. Oh, you didn't see my bat repellent, by the way. I'm so silly. There's the bat repellent. I don't think people saw it completely. There's the bat repellent, and then anti-aliasing. I looked up here. So let's try to find a picture before. Yeah, this is good enough. Doesn't need to be a special picture or anything. Let me ask you a question. It doesn't matter how much I zoom in or not. It doesn't really matter. In this picture, are there any aliases? Now, some of you will not be sure, which is probably the most safe answer one can have. And some of you will say, well, I'm going to look at the picture. Let's see, Pleasant says, I admit I don't know much about aliasing. Yeah, I didn't either. And then some of you will say, well, it clearly doesn't, because you're saying it doesn't have any jagged lines. So that raises the question, are jagged lines in a picture, are those aliases, like the jagged lines? And whether or not you answer yes or no, let's just go with the answer of yes for a second. Let's think about it. Okay? So if that's true, let's ask ourselves a few other questions about jaggedness. Okay? Okay, I'm going to hide this because I want it to be a surprise. Okay? Because we have to know how the language works. Okay? Yeah, this is a decent example. Okay. If that's your definition, that aliases, and by the way, that shouldn't be your definition of aliases, but we'll go with that for right now. This is a knife with a serrated edge. Is this knife aliased? I mean, it's got a jagged edge. For those of you who believe that aliases are jaggies, does this knife have aliases? Are there like 30 aliases on the edge of that knife? Here's another case. This is another case. So again, I'm gonna bring it up on my window, then drag it up. Does it exhibit aliasing? Everything in this image is jagged by definition, right? It's Pleasing. That's the correct response. It's unclear, right? But we're starting to realize, like, this is a checkerboard pattern. Is it aliased? Because there are jagged edges everywhere. It's the most alias this picture can get, actually. Especially if you thought of it, every square is one pixel, one square of color. Okay. And some people would say, yes, it is. Those are jaggies, therefore those are the aliases. And here, I'm going to show you what and then they'll come up with, well, what is anti-aliasing then? Right? Let me open up Clip, because it'll make more sense if I do this in Clip. Clip Studio Paint, by the way. I heard someone telling me Clip Studio Paint 5.0 is coming very soon. So I'm very curious about that. Okay, let's go and place this in here. New from clipboard. Okay, so I'm gonna get a new layer, and I'm just gonna, what would someone do to remove the aliases? Okay, they will, let me turn down the opacity. You'll make it sense. They'll blur it. Now, imagine these are big ass pixels, right? So they'll say, well, okay, I have made the line here less jagged because I've blurred it a little bit. And so, okay, now Pleasing, yes, 5.0. That's what someone said in the chat this morning. So they would say, I have blurred this, to some degree. I've put an intermediate value pixel there. So now this is anti-aliased. So is anti-aliasing just great, pixels in the middle of other pixels that blend? Is that what that is? And I think the answer to that is no. Right? That's what I thought Pleasing. I thought it was going to take longer. And I don't have the exact date, but someone said it's supposed to be coming very soon. So we have to resolve this question as well. Like, what's an alias? What is anti-aliasing? Does jagged edge mean alias? Does blurred edges mean anti-aliasing? Is that what anti-aliasing, blurring, is that what it does? Okay, so that's another kind of question. Now there's a third question, which is again language related, which is alias. What is an alias? Let me just ask ourselves. I'm going to look at etymology.com. What is alias? Where does it even come from for a second? Okay. Now, if there are better etymology sites, let me know. I'm not, this is the one I always go to. Alias. Mid-15th century, otherwise called, from Latin, alias. At another time. Interesting. In late Latin, another way, under other circumstances, from alius, another, other, alia. Oh, like et alia, okay. From Proto-Indo-European root, al, beyond, which is also the source of English else. Alias here, another definition from the 1600s. Fluffy tube socks, the pixel formerly known as Prince. That's right, I like it. An assumed name. It's also, if I can show you this. Now, some of you don't know this because it's number one, I don't think show anymore. It's not a show anymore, but there used to be a TV show called Alias. This is Jennifer Garner, an actress. She's from Cross Lanes, West Virginia. Cross Lanes, West Virginia. I've been in Cross Lanes many times. Does Alias have anything to do with Jennifer Garner or this show? No, it does not. But it's interesting. I think she was a spy, so she had different names in this show. She pretended to be different people. So it goes back to the definition of the word alias, right? Assumed name. So it's something that has the name, some other name. That, in fact, is close to what's happening. But why would a jagged edge be associated with the concept of an alias? Like, why that name? That's unusual. I've already hinted that jagged edge is not what an alias is, and there is a thing called an alias. But what is it, and why that specific word? Why didn't they call it pixel noise or something? Like, why alias? Okay, because we got to think about that. So all these things come together. And I'm going to try to build up, not everyone wants to do the math, so we're not really going to do much math here. I'm going to draw some things. I'm going to bring up examples. I just need to prep you with some concepts. Now, I think some of you are really deep into some of the topics we're going to get into, but I just want you to remember, I'm skipping over things. Number one, if you're one of these experts. Number two, I'm trying a certain pedagogical approach, meaning a way of teaching. And so I have a reason why I'm going through the things in the order I'm going through them. And out of necessity, I can't talk about every technical detail. First of all, I'm not an expert in these topics either. I'm just sharing with you what I've learned. And if there's something you would like to clarify about what I'm showing, please put it in the chat and we will clarify. Let's see. On the art software I use, there is an anti-aliasing, but I still don't understand what it is, since turning on and off have no difference, at least on my eyes. Okay. So we're going to get there. It's going to take some time, and it's going to build up in bits and pieces. But I want to lay a concept for you, okay? Which is statistics. I know, our favorite topic, which I never talked about, statistics, okay? And Have you ever heard the phrase that you can lie with statistics? And if you've ever been in a lot of businesses, it's pretty easy to lie with statistics. Okay, I'll show you examples. Depending on how you do certain things, your report, meaning when you present to somebody and you say, well, here's how the business is doing, you can make bad situations look not as bad or not even bad at all. You can make totally normal situations look crazy good or crazy. You can just lie. You can really lie or mislead. It's pretty easy if you know how to play with numbers. Okay, so what, generally speaking, is the lie? Or that's too strong. That's too strong. What is the thing that you can do in statistics that creates weird impressions of what's going on? Let's see. Hey, everybody. Anti-aliasing does matter if you zoom in. If you do stuff like pixel art, you will see it clearly, how it adds halftones and smooth pixels. And we have to explain why that is considered anti-aliasing. I mean, by some definition, doing that, it's actually not, this is going to sound weird to you, but by some definitions, adding these, halftones and smooth pixels is not anti-aliasing. I know it sounds odd. It goes back to my example. Let me bring it up in clip for a second. If I added a halftone between the diagonal row of black pixels here, by the strict mathematical definition, that is not anti-aliasing. Okay. Do people call it that? Sure they do. Right? Will it look blurred out a little bit? Yes. Right? But it is not strictly anti-aliasing. Right? Because it's not, I guess, there's an argument both ways, but I just want to open that perspective to you. That what we commonly call anti-aliasing is, it's not exactly what we might think. Okay. So, going back to statistics, I want to talk about how statistics can mislead you. Okay? And once you understand this, it's going to put us in the frame of mind for how doing things with pictures can be misleading. Let's see. I just checked it out. You can see with no anti-aliasing, it looks more pixely. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I'm going to keep this around. I might need it. So, let's see. I'll be back in a second. I need to get my water. Okay? You. I want to find, let me just talk about a scenario first, okay? So we're setting this up. The operation you can do with numbers that can create distorted views of reality is called aggregation, okay? Aggregation is anything that takes a bunch of numbers and groups them, and that group itself has a number. Let me give you a simple example. If you were to just have a list with everyone's height, okay, let's just say in the United States, and someone says, well, how big are people in the United States? Now, the real answer is all 350 million people. You'd have to get 350 million numbers, and that's the height of people in the United States. But there's no way a human mind can just deal with that, okay? So the simplest aggregation you can do is add all the numbers together, divide by 350 million, and you'll get a number, which is probably a number like, because we have children and children are very small. It's probably, I'm just going to guess the number is something like 3 feet. I bet you the number in the United States, if you took about the entire population, is like 3 feet tall or something. Okay. Because you have very tall people, but you have children who are all very small. And babies. We have babies in there who are like a foot, right? A third of a meter. So that, you can see the problem with that aggregation. It hides some complexity. Okay? But that's one kind of aggregation you can do. You can do other things. You can aggregate by age, and then you'll get a better, you'll get numbers that are age specific. That's another thing you can do. Another way of understanding these numbers is you can bin them in a histogram. So that, for example, let's just say everyone has like, sorry for the metric people, but everyone is like, 5'1", 5'2". We'll do it by inches. We'll just say they're, right? And we'll just count how many people are in each bucket of the 5'1s, the 5'2s, 5'3s, right? And if you did that, let's go back to clip here. Oops, that was Crete. I didn't mean that. If we did that, let me. Now I'm drawing with my mouse, and even though I have a tablet right in front of me, by the way. If you did that, you'd say like, I'm making up something, 5'1". You'd have you count everyone, and so it's like, you got 1 million people who are 5'1", and you go 5'2", and you have, 1.2 million people who are 5'2", et cetera, right? Okay, like this. Sorry, you can't see what I'm drawing. Okay, that's a histogram. Okay, and if you just kept on plotting the entire thing, you'd get something like this, actually, right? It's not perfect, but you get something like this. That's a distribution. And so there, it's like there's one line here, there's one line here, that's one line here, that's kind of thing. Okay. If you separate by males and females, you'll get slightly different bumps because men are taller on average than women. In the United States, I think the average height for men is 5'9", for women 5'6". Okay, so you get 2 different distributions. So histograms are interesting because they really start leading us down this this problem. I know, I'm drawing with a mouse. The tablet inquisition is coming. Because the question is, remember I said we're going to group everyone in like 5'1", like by inches, right? I didn't have to do that. I could have said we're going to group, because maybe that's too many buckets, because that's like, that's going to be like 80 buckets of numbers, right? Maybe the numbers are so widespread, I need to bin them, meaning I'm going to count everyone who's 5 feet tall, all the way to 5'5", right? That's going to be one bin. And I do 5'6" to 5'11" will be another bin, right? So I'm forgetting to do my symbols here. Let me add them all. Now, when you do this binning, the question is how big should the bins be? It's like it does look like a bell curve, right? Not all distributions, of course, are bell curves. Some are, quite different. But let's take a look at just how numbers get binned and what happens, okay? And sorry for the long setup, but this is like a kind of a histogram binning interactive example problems. I think that we'll find it. There's actually an AI site that's meant for understanding AI. Binning. Let's just find the example here. Let me try binning interactive demo. I want you to see it. Once you understand it, you'll get it. Okay, let's just see if this does it. I need a web tool, not a Windows tool. Hang on. Let's see if this does it. That's not what I want. Sorry. Just give me a minute. Let's find it. AI. this might be it. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So it doesn't matter what the data is, but you can see how we group things. So they're just numbers, and by default we start with from 6 to 9. Doesn't matter what the values are. It's just if there's a number between 6 to 9, they're in this bin. If they're in whatever this bin is, which is 9 to 11, they're in this. This is 11 to 14, and this is the shape we get. Right? So just watch what happens here, though. I'm going to reduce the number of bins. Now, when we get to 3 bins, we have a certain very simplified view of the numbers that we have. Okay? And as I get more, hey, look, it's more accurate. We have a better understanding of the shape. Excuse me. Oh, I gotta sneeze. Sorry. And then, as I keep picking the bins to get smaller and smaller, some weird stuff happens. Did you see what just happened there? Look at this. This bin got smaller than the next bin, which was unusual. Same thing happened here. Like they didn't just all go down. That was interesting. And there it happened again. When I had 11 bins, these 2 bins are the same size. But when I had 12 bins, this one suddenly dropped. Okay? And you can see now there's some wild changes in the shape of just because of the bin size. Remember, the source numbers haven't changed. Okay? And look at this. At 17 bins, it looks normal, then suddenly it crashes, then it comes up again here. Right? You might start to think weird things are happening because on the binning. Okay? And just take a look at how crazy it gets as I get more and more bins, right? Whoa. Here it's like suddenly there's discontinuity. It's like no one's in this bin, right? And it just gets more and more. See how much it's oscillating and getting weirder, right? Now, there's nothing wrong here. This is a natural effect of what's happening. And it is not directly relatable to aliasing and anti-aliasing, except in the fact that there's a choice of how we aggregate, which affects what happens, okay? Now for histograms, there's different strategies for selecting the bin size. Doesn't really matter, but I just want you to remember the point. How you decide to aggregate can create weird effects, okay? For example, if I showed you this if I showed someone this diagram, I didn't tell them the bin size, they might conclude something weird. That we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like we have 10 different, or whatever the number is, 10 different kinds of, no, they're grouped in like 10 or 12 ways. Versus if I show them another person this bin, they'll say, oh wow, we have 3 sets of numbers here. Right? You'll form very different views on what's going on depending on how you aggregate. And this same thing is going to happen with anti-aliasing and aliasing, etc. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about, Cami Luna, hopefully she's gonna join us. Let us talk, should we start with anti-aliasing? I think I'm actually, even though I talked about pixels, I may do a little bit of it about pixels first, then we'll go to aliases and anti-aliasing. But it's important that I think we need to start with a little bit of background here, okay? So give me a second. I'm going to set up my Huion tablet so that I'm going to duplicate the screen. So I don't think anything weird's going to happen, but just to prep you, I'm going to say duplicate on 1 and 3. Great, keep changes. And let's just make sure yeah, okay, this is good. And then I'm gonna make sure that I am on, okay, we're good. We're good. Now you can see exactly what I see, okay? Great. My mouse is acting a little weird. Okay. Maybe that wasn't the best idea. Let me try restarting my sync. There's a thing that's syncing my mouse. So I just want to restart that. Synergy, is it called? Synergy. Let me restart this thing. Hopefully that'll solve the problem. Sorry for the delay. It'll just let me troubleshooting. I just want to kind of reset this app for a second. Let's exit. Okay, and then I'll restart it. This will just make my mouse and pointer work better. Hopefully. Well, didn't do quite what I wanted. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like this since it's good enough for the moment. Okay. Okay. So, I'm gonna tell you something which is gonna be a little weird. Let me open up a different drawing app for a second. What is the one I have? Marker draw. Marker pad, was that what it is? Marker pad. What was the app I installed here? Hang on a second. Okay, maybe I'll just use an online tool. Or concepts or something. Oh, this is so confusing. Sorry, because I'm on... Since I'm duplicating displays, it gets a little bit odd for me. Okay, let's get back to... I'll use Microsoft Whiteboard for now. Unless I can figure out the name of that tool. Okay. So I guess the first thing I'd like to tell you is that there is a weird relationship between sound and images. A mathematical relationship. More important, that's not even actually a fair way of saying it. It's more like sound and images are both related to frequencies. It's very obvious in sound, isn't it? Because we talk about sound frequencies all the time. And with images, though, you and I don't talk about frequencies with images. It doesn't really make any sense. What you're going to discover is, in fact, it makes a lot of sense. And in fact, that is the origin of where we get the word alias when we talk about these jagged edges, okay? But none of this is going to make any sense unless we understand what the heck we're talking about the frequencies, okay? So first things, and I'm going to do a little bit of, background here. Everyone knows that sound, and we'll just talk about a pure tone, which is a wave, right? Everyone knows what a wave looks like. It looks like this, right? And this is just a sound wave, right? It's a sound wave. And I think you know that if I draw a wave like this, it's the same exact wave except it's higher. That's called the amplitude, right? Is increasing, right? Versus the same wave, but the amplitude is lower, is gentle, right? Now, what's the same between all these waves is the frequency. No, we don't. We don't speak about sound frequencies during lunch breaks. Okay? But there's another kind, we can also change the frequency. So I'll double the frequency, okay? I think I'm dropping it anyway. Oops. Why is it not drawing? Oh, I'm not on the pen. Okay, sure. Hello. Oh, sometimes I hate this thing. You see, I'm trying to keep the same height, but now it's doubled the frequency. Okay? So, basic stuff. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. And I'm going to introduce... Now, when you're listening with your ear, you don't hear just standard tones, right? In fact, what you hear is just a bunch of, your eardrums just hear, they're just being pushed back and forth in weird ways. And they're not regular like this, okay? Delete, let me delete all this. Control Z. Okay, what you hear is like, it's like this. There's just all sorts of, okay? Now this is what your ear actually experiences. Now, believe it or not, your mind can break these apart. Like someone can be singing, drums can be being drummed, A guitar may be shredded, but your mind can like separate all these things out. Okay, so keep that in mind. Your brain can actually do this. But I want you to be inspired by that idea, which is that you can see something like this and it can be broken apart. Okay, now believe it or not, I know this sounds crazy. Mathematically, you can actually construct a series of waves. Okay, like you can separate these out. So I didn't do it. I didn't draw the full wave there. Into multiple pieces that, when you add them together, will equal the original signal. That's weird, isn't it? That's a little weird, but it's mathematically true. And the guy who did it, the guy who talked about this, which some of you know the name, not quite, Nick. I'm trying to show like what's the actual amplitude of the sound something's hearing at a given. So this is time. Okay, it's not the histogram. It's not the histogram. Okay, this is just the frequency that's being experienced over time. So the y-axis is just time. So things are louder, quieter, louder, quieter. Okay. Though I understand why you're talking about histogram. That's a different, but that's not what I'm showing. Okay, so let's find this guy. I'll open him up underneath. He's a pretty cool guy, actually. His name, I actually forgot how to spell it. Okay. You got a lot of people with names like this. I'm gonna try to pronounce it, but we'll see. Jean-Baptiste Joseph Fourier. And just so we're on the same page, I mean Fourier, not, hang on, not Miguel Ferrer, who's a great actor. Okay, not this guy, who's a great actor. He died, unfortunately. Very sad about that. I loved him in some of his roles. He was just good. I'm talking about this guy. Okay. Joseph Jean-Baptiste Fourier. Look at this. Look at this guy, right? He's got a lot of really cool drip, and he was a mathematician, and he invented this thing called the Fourier series, or the Fourier transform, I think. But basically, anything that has this signal can be decomposed into smaller pieces, okay? And I know it sounds really stupid to talk about this, because like, what the heck does this have to do with aliasing and pixels? But it has a lot to deal with aliasing and pixels, okay? It's just not obvious, okay? Now, one thing I want to talk to you about is, let's get back to, sorry, where's my mouse? It disappeared on me. Where is the whiteboard? Where's the whiteboard? This thing, there we go. I hate that I cannot erase this quickly. It's one of my most irritating things about this Microsoft whiteboard. There's gotta be a way of erasing this thing fast. Yeah, whatever. I'll just create a new whiteboard. I've created hundreds already. Why not? Okay. The reason I showed you that that weird signal at the top is to show you that you don't have to break down nice things. They don't have to look like just regular things, right? In fact, they can look really weird. And specifically, they can look even like this. I know it sounds odd, but even a signal like this which is very digital looking, isn't it? It's just like down, up, down, up. Even this can be broken apart into all sorts of little waves, okay? And in fact, that was actually on that Wikipedia page. if I go there. I'll show you a picture of it. Where was it? Oh, I need to go in Fourier series. Yeah, here we go. Here's an example, actually. You see it? There's a big up, down, but the first approximation is just this big wave here, right? Let me zoom in. I think that'll probably even help more. But if we add another frequency, we can get, look at, it looks still bad, but you can see why it's getting closer. And then we add an even higher frequency. And then it's like, it's still weird. It's still really weird. But when we keep adding these more and more higher frequencies, we're starting to get, actually, weirdly enough, you can see how we're approximating the this up and down, right? This very digital look. This already should give you a clue that things that are digital can be sort of broken apart into different frequencies, even though you wouldn't expect that to be true, to be quite honest, right? Okay. Now, I don't know if I can draw this correctly, to be quite honest. Let's go back to this thing. Now, if this was sound, you can kind of interpret what all these things are. But all these things also apply to what you see with your eyes. Okay? Like, and now for this, I'll go to clip for a second. Okay? Let me get an air. Let me get one of these things here, the millipen, and let me turn this one down here. Okay, so what would it look like if that I had a gentle wave as an image, right? It would look something like this. And I apologize because this is not the normal way I do it. A gentle wave would go up and down like this. I'm gonna add a little more darkness to it, right? I know, it'll be blurred out more, but you get the idea, right? And just so that we're not misleading you, I'm gonna cut off some of the top and bottom here. So it's, right? So there is a visual way of interpreting this, okay? And let's suppose, I'm gonna draw something here. So this is kind of an image now, right? I'm actually drawing like a smooth up and down pattern, right? What if I really go hardcore and I just draw something like, oops, not that, sorry. I'm trying to make this really, sorry, I went to green, I didn't mean to do that. It's just straight up black, okay? Black and white, black and white, black and white, black and white. There's a way we characterize these images, and this image has high frequencies. High frequencies means when you need to suddenly transition from like all the way up to all the way down, meaning black and white. Remember how we decompose things? You get high frequencies in there. Okay? So you'll see people in the computer graphics field, they'll say, oh, this image has a lot of high frequency data. And what that means is it has these sudden transitions from black and white and black and white, okay? And the more smooth they are, they'll say it's more low frequency images, more low frequency data, okay? So again, what I'm trying to tell you is there's a way of thinking about images that talks about frequencies, okay? This thing on the top has high frequencies, and this thing on the bottom has lower frequencies, right? It can still get just as dark, but it doesn't do that suddenly, right? And this has really some interesting consequences for us, okay? So relationship between sound, meaning anything that with a wave, and waves can be used to describe sound, but also waves can describe even like how we go, in pixels from like stair steps. They're both describable by waves. And this actually is the ultimate source of this terminology called aliasing, by the way. But we still haven't explained why, okay? And to do that, we're gonna draw something else. Let me get back to... By the way, how's this explanation going? I know we're kind of rambling a bit. And again, if any one of you study this topic, and I'm leaving out some crucial detail or misleading, you know, which can totally happen, let me know. Because I'm sort of doing this on the fly, constructing this. And it does take a while. So I got to figure out if there's easier ways of explaining all. Okay. So now I want to talk to you about sampling. Because we don't listen to music by having someone with a violin next to us anymore. We listen to it over Spotify or YouTube, right? And before that, it was CDs. Before that, it was tape players. Most people don't experience live music anymore. That's its own problem. But what we're going to do is talk about this, bring something in from analog, meaning what your ear hears, to digital, and then back to analog, because you have to solve the entire problem. Like the MP3 file is useless unless you can hear it, right? If you can just digitize something, it's not useful. You have to reconstruct it, as they say. Okay, let me just check the comments. One Up Croaker, good to see you. That is how sonar looks on screen in the Navy. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Interesting. Okay, let's take a signal, and it's gonna be a smooth, it's gonna be a nice signal, okay? A nice signal, meaning it's just like this. Okay, just steady. You can consider this music. Let's consider this a sound. Hopefully, Nick, since you have some background, maybe it'll make sense in a little bit. So this is sound now. I know it's a wave, but specifically it's going to be sound. And we need to understand this to understand aliasing, okay? So let's suppose, when you're measuring sound, you take samples, right? Like every, I don't know, doesn't really matter. Just every something of a second, repeatedly you take a sample, you measure it. So like you take a sample here, and then I'm going to keep it really easy for a second, okay? Oops, let me get rid of this thing. I hate that it did that. Okay. Right? You measure it like this. Now, it's just coincidence that I'm putting them at the tops and the bottoms. It's not really a deliberate my choice. Okay? So this sound, I'm measuring twice between the peaks, okay? So I'm measuring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, okay? So there's a frequency, how much it's going, how fast between the, how fast it's cycling, and then there's how many times I'm measuring. Now, obviously, I could just measure like this, right? I could measure essentially infinitely many points as I wanted to. Okay? And you get the idea. I'm not going to draw the rest of them. Now, if you're measuring infinitely many points, you need infinite amount of storage, right? If you measure too few points, like if I'm measuring, I don't know, forget this one, like here, you're going to see that you're not really getting a true representation of the wave. I haven't showed it to you yet, but the question is, how do you reconstruct the wave? Okay? But that's the entire goal. We want to be left with this, something like this, right? And then we want to reconstruct the original wave perfectly. Now that's wild, right? Like, how could it possibly be true that if you started with this wave, which is infinitely perfect and infinite detail, that you chop it up and not chop it up, you take small measurements, and then you're somehow able to get back to and actually get this, the catch, a perfect reconstruction of the original wave. How could that possibly be true? But it is. It is. Now, I'm not going to get into exactly why the next statement is true, but many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. The question we're going to answer is, well, it's probably intuitive in your head that you can start measuring more and more, sampling more and more, but at what point is it useless? okay? Meaning you're not getting any more detail and you're just wasting storage. You're wasting your processing. There's actually a number here, okay? So you see this frequency? Let's, for the sake of argument, say the frequency is 30 hertz. I mean, the signal only goes up to 30 hertz. That's its highest frequency. You only need, for whatever reason, if you want to perfectly reconstruct this, you need to measure at 60 hertz, so twice the highest frequency of the sample. Okay? You need to do that. And through some really strange process, if you do that, if you know for sure your original signal is, the maximum it goes to is 30 hertz, and you measure at 60, you can perfectly reconstruct the original signal. Okay? I'm going to take a very brief diversion just to show you the guy who invented that. Actually, or I think there are multiple people, but this was, I think, the first. So give me a second. I'm going to bring him. The Russian guy who died some time ago. Yeah. Okay, some of you are going to be upset because it's going to show a picture of someone that maybe you don't like, but this is the truth. So it's this guy. His name is Vladimir Kotelnikov. This guy on the right. He got awarded some major prize. Oh, he died in 2005, so just 21 years ago. But he's the guy who figured out, I think, how to reconstruct that signal. Okay? Like perfectly. Okay? Now, it doesn't matter the exact process, but the reconstruction is important for a tech, just because you need to be able to do it. But we don't need to get into the math. Though maybe later I'll show you at least a visual illustration of how you reconstruct the signal. Okay, so where are we at now? Images and sound are both describable as frequencies, and if you're trying to sample something, what is an image you have, what is a digital file you have? A sound one is you're measuring sound every few seconds or per unit time. An image is like that too in a certain way, okay? You're measuring a frequency. Now the question we said is like, how much do you need to sample to restore it back? And we said you need to do double the highest frequency. For sound, it's pretty obvious, right? But you should see then, you can understand, I think, where's my mouse here? We can do the same thing. We can do the same thing even if the shape is like this, right? We don't need to restrict ourselves to just nice waves. This can also be reconstructed to, So they're both thought of as frequencies. And this is like a pixel's going white and then it's black, white, black, that kind of thing, or gray in this case, right? Now we're going to get into aliasing. Okay, and for this, it's first easy to understand sound. Okay, so let's erase this. And now the question is, I said you had to do it at 60, but what if you didn't? What if you sampled at less than that number, right? Like, so you did it like this. And I'm not perfectly evenly distributing these lines, so you can see it. Now, if I draw these lines here, these samples, what are you seeing here? And again, this is very sloppy. Okay, you're not going to be able to reconstruct the original image. That's problem number one. okay? There's another problem, which is not obvious in this picture, okay? If you reconstruct this, I'm just gonna draw a bad image, but you know, you might get something like this. Like it would not look right. It's not faithfully reconstructing it. But there's another problem. Remember, it's all about like how fast you're measuring. There's another problem with measuring things, which is let's see. Let me do it like this. Let me erase all this stuff here. And I'll try to draw it, maybe not literally, but more as a figurative thing. If there's a lot of high frequency data, okay, and you're not sampling fast enough, your reconstruction will. Let me redraw this. Let me redraw this because it'll maybe be more obvious. If there's a lot of high frequency data, right? Not always, but there's some. And remember, your reconstruction is going to have some signal. And remember, you can break apart every signal into pieces. So so long and short, these high frequency things show up as lower frequency things in the reconstruction, okay? So something that is higher and you're measuring will show up as something lower, okay? High frequencies, when you're sampling, if they're beyond that limit, will show up as lower things. High shows up as low. This is an alias for sound, okay? For sound, if something's beyond that measuring frequency, you will hear it as a lower sound, but you won't understand how it came into your audio because it's not in your audio. It's actually a synthetic, the reconstruction of the audio has generated it. It wasn't in the original sound you heard at all. And it'll sound weird. It'll sound, I think, garbled or something. It'll sound unusual. It's actually kind of tricky to create this effect, I hear. I didn't mean that as a pun. It's actually tricky to create the effect because lots of software tries to stop it from happening. But you can force tools to do it, to sample, to create this aliasing. So aliasing as sound will show up as, so high frequency audio will show up as low frequency weird sounds. The reason the word alias is used is that, like, that's the concept. This high frequency has another name, I guess you could say, right? This is an alias for this. The low frequency is an alias for the high frequency, right? The idea that it has two names, okay? How does this happen? So what does this have to do with images, finally? Okay? And it has to go back to, actually what happens in images. All right. Tell me if I've lost you guys. This may be too much to go through. Again, like I just wanted to try this out. Maybe this example is getting too complicated. Like I'm going too off into the weeds. But that's the feedback I'm actually looking for. So in images, we're doing sampling all the time. Okay, and I guess I would say there are three ways in which sampling happens that we would experience, okay? The one is you have a camera, okay? So you're looking at a tree. God darn it. It keeps switching to the select tool. Here's a badly drawn tree and sun and some mountains, okay? So you're out in nature and you take a camera, right? Or your phone. So this is the image, okay? And then you sample it. And what that sample means is I know this is kind of weird. You're generating you're generating a grid of samples. These are one-dimensional measurements of like how bright and how much color, okay? These are the actual pixels, okay? And then later you're gonna reconstruct that into something on your monitor that you see, okay? The scientist guy I mentioned earlier, the reconstructor is actually the actual physical pixel, by the way. He calls that the spreader. Don't ask why. But there's a logic and reason to it. That's one way you sample an image. And another way is you already have a image, and then you're running a filter, meaning like a Photoshop filter, like you're resizing it, right? Maybe let me just say it like that. We're resizing it, like we're making it smaller. So you're generating another sample. This is called resampling. And then you're going to show that on your monitor, okay? Well, we'll try to get into that a little bit later, Nick. I do want to resolve any questions you have here. And I guess the final way that we encounter sampling is you have use like Clip Studio Paint or Illustrator. It has a vector mode, right? You have a vector stroke, which is mathematically perfect, okay? That's a vector stroke. It's all just math. And that also, you have to generate pixels. You have to generate samples from that. And that gets displayed on a monitor, okay? So this has to be converted from this mathematical precise thing through some process called rasterization. Rasterization, okay? But this is essentially a kind of sampling also. All of these things take something and they sample it and create a new thing, okay? The middle case is special because you're starting with an already sampled thing. Now remember what I said. When you're sampling and you have high frequencies from what you're starting with, you will get aliases in the output, okay? And we know what the aliases are in sound. The aliases are high frequencies masquerading as low frequencies, garbled, weird, lower sounds. What are they in these cases? In all these three cases? Well, they're pixels that show up that aren't in the original image, okay? And those pixels often show up as what you and I call jaggies. So there's a couple of, right? They're just weird pixels that appear here. And that all comes because sampling is occurring to create this thing, okay? High frequencies become lower frequencies, okay? And there's so many ways sampling can occur, and there's ways it can be defeated. Oh, sorry, aliasing can occur, right? So this is the origin of the word alias. The alias is not a jaggy, and aliasing can occur in other ways. But seeing a jagged edge, and if you know the picture was sampled, you know that that's the effect of the aliasing, okay? That jagged edge. If I just draw a checkerboard, there's no aliasing there because there's no sampling. I just drew the checkerboard. Like in Clip Studio Paint, if I just drew some pixels randomly, there's no, while they are jagged, it isn't a result of sampling. In fact, there's no aliasing there, is what I'm trying to say, right? So that's what an alias actually is. It's weird pixel effects it's because of sampling. So how do you deal with aliases? Well, you do anti-aliasing, and there's actually different techniques of anti-aliasing, okay? One way, remember I told you that high frequencies cause the aliases in the sampling? One technique is to take the source image and remove, and sort of, believe it or not, blur it out. What does blurring do? It reduces the sharpness, which means you're doing lower frequencies in the image, which means you're bringing down the frequencies to where the sampling will not create these weird aliases, okay? So that's one technique of anti-aliasing, is, believe it or not, blurring the image before you sample it, or resample it, right? And there's all sorts of other techniques, right? There's all sorts of techniques that apply to, let's say this case where you're rasterizing a vector. Those are other kinds of anti-aliasing that happens. They're not all one technique, and these are all things that happen before or while you're generating the image. There's another technique where you can take an image like this one here, this vector, and let's say you want a 2K image, like 1920 by 1080, you can actually render this image as a 4K image, then size it down, and that will help get rid of some of these artifacts, these aliases. There's also other post-processing techniques. Once you've created the image, you can do all sorts of other things to effectively blur or smooth out lines, and those will reduce the aliases. And again, the aliases are the result of higher frequencies being resampled, higher frequencies that, because of a process of sampling, show up as lower frequencies, and the lower frequencies just mean weird pixels, right? And let me try to show you here's another sampling thing that happens, or aliasing thing. Let me find it for a second. You've seen this before. Let me just look it up here. So yeah, this is actually a moire pattern. Moire? I forgot how to actually pronounce it. And why is it appearing? Because there's a grid of pixels. You're photographing it with a camera, which has another grid, and there's there are two different frequencies involved. There are two different sort of sized grids involved. So it can produce these weird effects here. Here's another example of this moire pattern. You see this? It's not that the bridge actually has the weird areas here. It's a result of there's a frequency of the bridge here, these grates are, and something behind it or in front of it. What's another good example here? Yeah, here's another one. So this is like a misalignment of two grids. And again, it's because there are different frequencies involved, which are close enough, and they're causing these weird artifacts. Like, do these diamond shapes exist? No. They're an artifact of sort of how things are being put together. So that's, okay, so let's just recap where we're at. A pixel is a measurement of light, okay? And when you start thinking about measuring light, you can treat sound and images as kind of working up the same principles as frequencies. It's obvious for sound, less obvious for images. And using that terminology, when you're creating images from other things, meaning you're creating a bitmap from the real world, a camera, or you're resampling a bitmap, or you're taking a vector and rasterizing it, all these involve taking samples and then generating a bitmap. And if there are high frequencies in the original thing, you can create aliases, lower frequency aliases. And that's why we talk about anti-aliasing is not blurring. Blurring is one of the many techniques for anti-aliasing. Okay, not all anti-aliasing techniques are blurring. Arts is here. Art says, one thing to remember is moire patterns also have a naturally in your eyes and not always a part of That's right. Thank you. And different people will see them different. I didn't know different people would see them differently, Arch. That's actually new to me. I guess that's another way of thinking about that. You know, your eyes themselves, I guess, in a way, sample things, right? So I hope that clarified a few things. We know now why it's called an alias. And it's called an alias because of how we can describe images and sound as frequencies. That's the first thing we've understood, right? Actually, the first thing we understood is a pixel is a measurement, okay? And I'm not done yet. I'm gonna talk about pixels and spreaders. That's another topic, okay? But if you accept a pixel as a measurement, how fast you're measuring or how many measurements you have, when you're resampling, you can create weird artifacts. So there's many techniques to remove it. And that's why checkerboards are jagged, but don't have aliases, right? For it to be an alias, I think the truest way of saying something has aliasing is it the result of sampling? If that's the case, then yes, you can say there's aliasing. But if you just drew a checkerboard, there's no aliasing there. There's jagged lines, but not aliases. People on the spectrum see high stimulus inputs a lot differently from normal people. And a lot of people have noise and stuff in their vision that's more prevalent with other people, which will cause pattern. I did not know that. I had no clue. Okay, so I'm just gonna check the comments, check in if anyone else has. Did I lose people with this? Is this too much to absorb? But this is my first attempt at trying to explain what an alias is. Okay, which is, again, to create images we have to sample, and high frequencies in the original translate as low frequencies in the sampling. Those low frequencies show up as weird pixels that you didn't expect to be there. Okay. So I'm trying to relate, a bunch of things. Now I want to talk about pixels for a second, because I said some weird things earlier, which are kind of surprising, and I glossed over it. So I don't think, I think if you walk down the street and you went to, a university and you said what I'm about to say, not everyone would agree. And it's okay, because there are multiple ways of being correct here. But I'm using one of the founders, actually the guy who has this position, his name's Alvy Ray Smith. He actually invented, I think he co-invented the alpha channel, right? Alpha transparency. As an example, I'm one of those autistic, noisy vision people, and I don't need to run any AA games. Aliasing does not bother you. Interesting. In fact, I'm actually bothered by anti-aliasing a bit. I kind of prefer things just to be sharp. Probably doesn't bother you as much when there's some stuff shimmering. Yeah, that's a good point. That shimmering effect at the edges of things. Okay, so everywhere on the internet, if you look it up, what will they tell you? They will say that a pixel it's a little square of color, right? It's a square of color, and they'll relate that to, like, an RGB element in a display. Okay, it's part of a display. They're not wrong. This is just one way of thinking about it, right? And we think of it as a square of color because when we talk about pixels, we're used to seeing that when we zoom in, right? Alvy Ray would say those are not pixels, and I understand his point, by the way. I kind of agree with it in a way. Another way we talk about pixels is we know that these things are stored in memory as a grid, kind of. And so intuitively, we can think of one part of the grid as a pixel. Like this grid, I don't mean just on screen, I mean like in memory, in computer memory, right? So that's another way we talk about pixels. There's RAM, and we have like pixels in RAM, right? Modern AA methods are really bad. Most of them have a lot of smoothing involved. MSAA and SMAA, I'm not familiar with SMAA, is pretty much fine, always desirable apart from needing more GPU. TAA and FXAA are developed by, those are, they're too complicated? They take too many resources, maybe? So, but Alvy Ray's position is that none of these are pixels, okay? Because he doesn't view pixels as related to display at all. And so we need to understand his position and why, but we also need to relate what the hell these things are to his position. So he says that a pixel is not any one of these things, that it's I think it's called like did he say one-dimensional or zero-dimensional? I think, let's just figure it out. Oh, that's what he calls it. I want to make sure I get the dimensions right. Alvy Ray. Pixel definition. Let me find it. Oh yeah, okay. He would say it's a 0D, meaning zero-dimensional, a point containing, I'm just copying the definition, color, luminance, data. Okay? It's purely abstract. It's just a measurement that has no dimension, not even one dimension. It just says there's like color and light here. That's all it says. Okay? So now, in order to flesh this out, subpixel morphological anti-aliasing. It does what? I don't know. I don't think I have the background to know exactly what that. I have some. Since you said subpixel, I'm kind of have some basic idea what that could be for sure. Okay. Do you remember I told you that you could measure something, and you did all these measurements, and as long as you measured at twice the highest frequency in the image, you could reconstruct the image. Not even just approximate, but perfectly reconstruct the image, right? Which seems insane. How could you possibly construct an infinitely perfect signal from just a couple of data points? That is what this Kotelnikov guy did. That is his thing. Kotelnikov. What was it? It was Vladimir. Kotelnikov. I'm gonna find a better picture of him actually. Yeah, I found one. He looks much cooler here than when he's like 97 years old. So this is the guy we're talking about, Vladimir Kotelnikov. We don't, apparently he's much more known in Russia. In the West, they didn't like to talk about this guy. But he was pivotal to all this. And Alviri makes a big point of mentioning him. So he found the way to do it. Okay? And let me see if I can find his... So the question is, how do you get back to the original thing, right? And let me see if I can find an example of his thing. Yeah, I've got, I think I can paste it in here. This is from Alviri's site, I think, actually. So this is, unfortunately the text here is in Russian, so I didn't copy it. So I'm trying to find the actual word, the description of this. There's some pictures here I can figure out. I'm going to use the word spreader. Okay, so this is Kotelnikov's spreader, and let me draw it so we're clear what it is. It's this shape. And I didn't dwell on this topic, but this kind of goes infinitely off in every dimension. By the way, it's not just a slice; it actually just rings out in infinity. And I know this seems crazy to you, but this is the key to reconstructing the image. Okay. So, he actually has the things here. So I'll just copy and paste them, and so it'll be a little easier to explain than me drawing it inaccurately every time. Okay. So let's start off with. Yeah, okay, I'll do it like this. This is cool, since I can reuse this page. Here's the original sample, okay? Then you measure it at the frequency, which is twice the highest frequency, right? You measure, so just this many points as you got, okay? Which means what you're left with is this. Let me make it bigger for you. Got it. Okay? So, again, here's the mystery. How do you get from this back? Mathematically perfect. You use Kotelnikov's thing, which Alviri calls a spreader. Okay? And it's this thing. Now you're probably wondering, how the hell do you use a spreader to do this? Okay? So I'll explain it to you this way. You take this shape, okay, and you see where the peak is. Actually, you know what? I know an idea. I know a way of showing this to you, which might be possible, but I need to use clip for this one. Let's see, where's clip? Okay, this might work. This might work. I can't wait till I get a bunch of comments from people saying all the technically wrong things I've said in this video. That's gonna be funny. Yeah, Arch, it is like that. It is kind of like that. Okay, let's take that spreader. how do we use that spreader to reconstruct the original image? Like, it seems impossible. And I sure don't have the background in math to be able to explain it either, okay? Let's be clear on that topic. But I know I can visually illustrate a little bit of it before we see the next image. So what you do is you take one of the samples there, and you take the spreader, and I'm going to duplicate the spreader in a second. Actually, let me just do it right now. Let me duplicate this. Okay. I've duplicated the spreader. Oops, wrong thing. And I'm moving it up here, and I'm going to change this to... I want darken. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to move this down for a second. Sorry. Okay. I needed a copy of it with that. You take the spreader and you scale it to the height of the sample, which is roughly speaking like this. And by the way, a little bit of it goes down below the beginning, I believe. So it goes negative in places. Okay, so you do that. That's the first sample. And then you do that again for the second sample. Right? You scale it until it's like this. And move it over. Okay? You keep on doing this. You keep scaling this, moving this spreader. And actually, they use an approximation, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But eventually, it'll look like this. We'll go back to the mic whiteboard for a second. Eventually, you get this. Now, it's still, all it does is look like a bunch of waves, but you got to add up all the waves, okay? Because now we have all these different waves, one for each pixel that we measured. And when you actually add it up, because they're not added up here, it actually looks like this. Okay, the black line on top is adding it all up. And that is the original image. The original sample, right? The original signal. So how this guy was clever enough to do this is amazing, I think. Oops, I pasted the wrong thing. This is the original image, the original sample, right? So this is a perfect mathematical perfect recreation of the original signal. And with audio, this is what they're doing to give you back the what you hear from these little points, okay? Now the question is, if you've ever drawn in Clip Studio Paint and you're seeing what you're drawing on screen, where is this spreading operation happening? Is there like a piece of code that does the spreading operation? That's a good question. I wondered the same thing myself. So, well, I scale things, Nick. I scale things. Maybe it's not perfect either. It might be because this was reconstructed with a. Actually, just to be sure, it was reconstructed with a slightly different signal. It was actually in the diagram. Actually, he used this as the spreader, which is not the same as the mathematically perfect one. So he used an approximation. So I'll say it's close. If you use Kotelnikov's spreader, you get the exact thing. If you're using the approximation, you get something slightly off. So sorry, thank you for bringing that out. I did forget to mention that. So what spreads out a pixel? By the way, a pixel is it's a thing in space. It's two-dimensional. So the spreader is actually 2D and actually looks like this. It's this kind of signal, okay? The stream's already over an hour long, and as I say, perfect is the enemy of done. That is true. I have avoided this topic for 4 years because I thought I'd have to be perfect. So I just thought I'd do it. I just thought I would do it. So where is this function happening when you're seeing, like Clip Studio Paint show something on your display? Do the displays have a piece of code that's doing this spreading, right? And the answer is no. They do have something, but it's not, they don't have this mathematical spreading function. You know what they have? Let me find my old picture here, hang on. Remember I told you that on one side, we have people who think that a pixel is this little RGB triplet in the display, right? That's one perspective, which is not wrong. And on the other side, we have Al V. Ray, who says a pixel is a zero-dimensional point that measures color and luminance. And the way he says you take a pixel and get it to your eyes, or reconstruct the original image, is you use a spreader. Okay, but if you're actually doing this work, where are these spreaders? And this is the part that I think I got, because I wondered that question myself. Like, where are the spreaders? I've never seen anyone in my history in working computer graphics talk about a spreader. Like, it's just like, huh? What the heck? It's just not it's just not said. That word is not used or anything like it. So I watched a video where Al V. Ray actually explained this. What he calls a spreader is what we call a pixel, the little square of RGB, right? Because that's its purpose. Its purpose is to take that sample and create some, thing glowing, right? So that I guess I'm not sure he would agree with this, that the spreader, instead of being something mathematical when in our world, the spreader is actually the pixel, what we call a pixel. Okay? Because its job is to take these measurements and put them into the visible light spectrum. And our eyes, I guess, interpolate as well or something, right? Anyway, there you go. That is, what is a pixel? What is an alias? What is anti-aliasing? Why do we call it an alias? Like, what's the origin of the term? We also talked about how to look at images as frequencies and why does that even make sense, and why that is the origin of the word alias, right? We also we learned that you can't, aliasing is not the same thing as jagged edge. A jagged edge is the outcome of aliasing, but you can have jagged edges, and aliasing only happens because you're sampling or resampling, or rasterizing, which is a kind of sampling, I guess. But just because you see something jagged doesn't mean sampling occurred. Okay, therefore it can't be an alias. Okay, so I know that may be a little bit too, what's the right word here? I may be sort of trying to parse too fine a line between these words, but I wanted to share that with you because I always get a bit freaked out when I see people look at an image and they say, oh, it's got all these jagged edges. And they're like, oh, it has a lot of aliases. I'm like, really? How do you know that it has aliases, right? Because you drew it that way. It wasn't sampled at all. It literally is just the pixels you drew. So I was always disturbed by that. It also explains, if you actually read, if you hang around a lot of people who do computer graphics, they will look at a photo, literally a photo of a cat or something, and they'll say, oh yeah, this picture has a lot of high frequency elements. Now, if you didn't know what the hell they were talking about, what that means, it's going from basically really like black to white and back or something. Meaning it's got sharp edges. If you didn't know what they meant, you might not, it would be very confusing what they're referring to. Like, what the hell is a high frequency component of an image, right? Because they're used to like thinking about images as frequencies, right? Okay, let's see. All 3D graphics are also 2D, and it's just a hoax. and all the math is also 2D. All of the math is also in 2D, and it's one of the things you quickly figure out when working with graphics. I'm curious about that comment, Arch. The chattest anti-aliasing method is just displaying an unlimited resolution picture. I mean, there's a functional resolution limit to the universe, right? Like a Planck constant or something. Would that be fair? I mean, there is some lower bound, but I guess that is the most Chad-like thing you can do. What would we call this? We would call this, I was about to say alias maxing. What would it be called to show a high resolution image? Resolution maxing? Resolution mogging, maybe? Alias, what's that word? What he hits himself on the jaw. Something, there's looks maxing, mogging. X3, a space game from early 2000s, had support for 10. Let me just make sure I'm reading that correctly. X3, a space game from early 2000s, has support for 100K resolutions. I gotta find this out. Res maxing, I like that. Okay. So res maxing, I do like that one actually. The reason I like it is in the movie Tron, there was a concept called being de-resed, which I guess was being killed. But I just love the way they incorporate that terminology. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on this explanation, because obviously I'm gonna have the transcript of this talk. And I'm looking for a simple way to go through all these concepts, because there's a lot, right? And I probably spent too much time on some things for sure, but I think there's a way I can get my key points down so that, again, we're left with those conclusions, which is what is an alias, what is a pixel, what's sampling, why is it called an alias, are Jaggies aliases, is blurring always anti-aliasing? I think we covered all these things. Right? They were something like 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. I can't even fathom that. Let me take a look at this game. Hang on. What is this game? I've never heard of X3 game. I've never heard of it. Let's see. As an adult, you can now turn on. Okay, I'm just gonna say confirm. I don't even know what this ad thing did. X3. Is this the game? I mean, it looks good. Let's take a look at I've never heard of this. The funniest part is that the UI scales down during higher res. It was already painful at 1080p. I couldn't even see the UI height. Oh, yeah, I've experienced UIs like that. I still encounter UIs like that on Windows. There's a lot of software on Windows that's still like, you use it on 4K and suddenly like you get really tiny things. They haven't been updated in like forever. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. It covered everything I wanted to talk about. Again, I'm gonna try to find a way of explaining this in a more clear way, a way that is more compact, and one that I can do a shorter video on. I think it would take about 30 minutes total. But I also want to make sure because I'm not an expert in this field, I want to make sure people who know about the field aren't going to get irritated about the stuff I say. So I want to make sure I capture Albie Ray's position correctly. I want to make sure I'm saying the right terminology. And I want to make sure I'm not making wild, statements that are misleading, which is very easy when you're not, deeply in the field. It's a German space war economy sim with the worst software design known to man and the most painful UI design ever. Okay, so it's not something I should try, it seems. Okay, everyone, thanks for your time. thanks for joining me. This was, I think it was certainly fun for me. And again, I will try to make something that condenses all this. Okay. And we'll talk again soon. I think it's going to be there's a few things I do want to talk about before I leave. Okay. Hang on. I'm going to show you something which I don't know if I'm being trolled, but I feel like it could be that I'm being trolled by Huion. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. Huion, this is from Huion's official account on X. And they're teasing us and trolling us. Pentech 5.0, question mark. I don't think so, but whatever. March 12th, which is in 2 days. What do you think it does? Take a look at this pen. Let me put the link in here for you. Is this going to be the topic of the next video? I think so. This Huion pen for sure, because that's only in 2 days. So I might stream before then, but you're talking the next video? I'm not sure. I am behind on so many videos. I started getting really behind in 2025, and I'm still really behind. And every week I find some video I want to do. So we don't know what to think about this. It's a weird looking pen. It's kind of, and it's got this thing that snakes around the side, which I'm totally intrigued by. So something's going to happen with Huion on the 12th. We don't know what it is. But I'm really intrigued by this pen. I don't think they're playing a game. I don't think they're completely trolling us, because that would be a really mean thing to do. Is this the new pen for some kind of note-taking device? Is this a new pen for some pen tablets that they're making? I don't know. But it was a really interesting quote to start the day with for me. Or a post to start. You don't like it, Nick? Wacom had a pen that was let me just see if I can find it for you. I'll show you this pen Wacom made. I forgot the name of the pen. Hang on. Okay, this is from one of our Discord users. Okay. So Wacom had this pen, which the Huion pen reminded me of. I forgot which model this is. ZP300E. Okay. So maybe they're doing something. Look, all I want right now is a Pentech 4.0 pen tablet. Okay? That's all I want. I don't know why they're preventing me from having that. I think it looks intriguing. Look, I'm willing to give it a shot. It's weird. Yeah, it's very weird. I've just never seen a pen with a design like this. One Up Kroger says, maybe the new Huion Android tablet with the 2.5K screen. Maybe. But it just seems so unusual for a pen that's going to go with a device like that. Arch says that the Huion pen looks like an Xbox 360 prototype. It does look like a prototype, doesn't it? Right? It doesn't look like this is function. Function meaning this twist on it doesn't look like it's doing anything. It's not like a clip. It's baked into the body. Hi, Digital Fracture. We actually are close to ending the stream, but thanks for joining us. I just don't know about this one. 2 days, though. 2 days. And since Digital Fracture joined us, I'll mention also, someone told me in the Discord today that Clip Studio 5.0 is coming soon. Don't know exactly when, so curious about that. I'm hearing, I think XP Pen said something might be happening, but I can't remember. Let me, give me a second. Let me go to their, you just got from an old man nap? I'm going to be taking an old man nap in a minute. I had a really good old man nap yesterday. Most of the day for me was just napping. Let's see, X. Let's see if I can find it here. There was something from XP Pen. I'm looking at their X account. All I see right now is this XP Pen Note Plus, which I'm not really into note-taking devices. But we'll see. Okay. All right, it says, wake me up once CSP uses more than one thread and doesn't take 50 seconds to apply transform. Yeah, I can understand why people be frustrated. I myself, it doesn't matter too much to me because I just don't have... The way I use Clip-to-Your Paint isn't very challenging, so it doesn't affect me. But I understand why people would be frustrated. Well, they did put to be fair, Digital Fracture, they put a question mark after that 5.0, right? Like, they didn't say 5.0, they just said question mark, 5.0 question mark. But look, I want that. I want more tablets, right? That is not functional design, Nick says, just some random curves on cheap ball pens. I don't know. I see why you say that, but maybe it'll feel good to hold, right? Maybe. But it is an unusual design. Okay, I've been going now for 1 hour, 50 minutes. Okay, I covered everything I wanted to about anti-aliasing and pixels and sampling, etc. I am gonna call it a stream, and who knows, maybe I'll be streaming later again tonight, or it does look like a fancy BIC. That's right, Digital Fracture. It does actually look like a fancy BIC. I think I'm gonna end the stream. Again, I may be streaming again tonight or tomorrow or something. Definitely, I think on the 12th, I will be streaming again with whatever Huion is releasing, and we'll talk about it some more. Until then, I want to thank you all for joining me. This was a little bit of an experimental session where I came up with what I was going to talk about on the fly. But I'm really glad I got an opportunity to do it because I've been waiting to talk about this topic for 4 years, and finally I got a chance to just get it out there. And as someone mentioned, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So I'm glad I finally overcame that with this topic. With that, I bid you farewell, everyone. I'll see you all soon, okay? Goodbye.